Please request the speakers on the panel to join me on the dais, please. Shri Amit Kumar Ghosh will join us shortly. Mr. Puneet Anand, AVP Corporate Affairs, Hyundai Motor India. Shri Sudhendu J. Sinha, Advisor, Infrastructure Connectivity, Transport and Electric Mobility, Niti Aayog. Thank you for joining us, sir. Mr. Venkata Chundru, Director, IBI Group India. Thank you for joining us, sir. Dr. Ravinder Minhas, Deputy Chief General Manager, Delhi Transport Corporation. Thank you for your presence, sir. So I'm Dhruv Behel. I'm a director with the Exhibitions India Group, and I'm also editor of the AutoX magazine. It gives me real pleasure to welcome you here this afternoon in person to the 28th Convergence India and 6th Smart Cities India Expo. And this session is the future of mobility in India. While digital communication has been our lifeline this past year, the year gone by has also taught us the tremendous value of in-person, face-to-face interaction. So I thank you again for being here this afternoon. I'd also like to thank you for adhering to the safety guidelines, keeping your masks on, maintaining social distancing norms, and regularly sanitizing your hands. The aim of this expo is to support the Digital India and Smart Cities India missions. We have an extremely engaging, high-level 3-day conference program, which includes live conferences as well as virtual sessions and a virtual expo platform for our international exhibitors. In fact, we have 4 sessions running in parallel, 2 live sessions and 2 virtual. We also have all of these sessions being beamed live on our social media platforms and our virtual expo platform. We also have a virtual expo zone on the exhibition floor where delegates and visitors can view the virtual sessions as well. With that said, once again, I'd like to thank all the esteemed panelists for their presence here this afternoon. Shri Amit Kumar Ghosh, who's IAS Joint Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, as I mentioned previously, will be joining us in a little while. Shri Sudhendu J. Sinha, again, is Advisor, Infrastructure Connectivity, Transport and Electric Mobility, Niti Aayog. Mr. Puneet Anand is AVP Corporate Affairs Unit, Hyundai Motor India. Mr. Venkata Chundru, Director, IBI Group India, and Dr. Ravinder Minhas, Deputy Chief General Manager, Delhi Transport Corporation. To say that the landscape in the mobility space is changing rapidly with the adoption of EV technology would be a gross understatement. At the same time, this past year has dealt another unusual challenge in the form of COVID, which has had an impact on shared mobility and on public transport. So there's a great deal of flux and a lot to discuss. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to each of the panelists to share some of their opening remarks, and we can take the discussion on from there. Shri Sinha ji, if I can request you to address us with your opening remarks, please.
Thanks. Am I audible? Okay. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me to be here. You rightly said that mobility is going to be a big challenge in today's world. And as it draws its provenance from smart cities, that means that as cities are going smarter, so will the residents be. There will be a demand for mobility that is equally smart. By that I mean that more of digital intervention, a sustainable mobility, a shared mobility, that becomes an absolute necessity kind of thing. So, with smart cities, smart residents, and in addition to that, let me tell you that we are in a very young India. Amongst all the developing economies, probably we must be one of the youngest. The average age of India is 28, 29 years. That is the age at a time with most of the Europe, US, China, Japan is on the other side of 40s. That is the kind of young India, aspirational India that wants access to socio-economic opportunities. Mobility is one method of accessing them, and that is why it is so much of relevance that the mobility has to be a smart mobility. That is my keynote beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In one of the earlier sessions, we had the inaugural session, which was smart cities focused, in the other hall a little while ago. And one of the panelists mentioned that transit generally in our cities comes later. First, it's real estate development, and then we figure out connectivity, whereas it ideally should be the other way around. We should figure out the connectivity first, and that's what we're discussing on this panel. And then the real estate aspect of a smart city comes in. May I request Mr. Puneet Anand, AVP Corporate Affairs, Hyundai Motor India, to share a few thoughts.
Good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, I would like to thank all the fellow panelists for a great opportunity to interact on this great platform. I'd also like to thank Mr. Dhruv for making this effort to have such a relevant topic in terms of the smart cities and how the mobility is changing shape as far as the Indian automotive industry is concerned. I think I'll 100% agree with my fellow panelist Shri Sinha ji from Niti Aayog that we are undergoing a transformation. I think India is the country which is now at a cusp of a J curve, as we all call it, how this explosion in the mobility and connectivity is going to take shape. Incidentally, yesterday I was in one of the functions where Honorable Minister for Road Transport and Highway, Shri Gadkari was present, and he was telling how even the government is transforming itself in terms of enabling the people to go to that quantum leap. There was a time when on an average we used to lay around 3 to 5 kilometers of road every day. But with the efforts of the government in the last couple of years, this has already come up to 35 kilometers of road laying per day, which eventually will be around 40 kilometers by the end of this month as we speak. Now this shows that with the coming up of the infrastructure in a very refined and a smart way, the dream is not far when the entire India will become actually a smart country, let alone talking about the smart cities. And connectivity will be one of the key areas, because when we look at our Indian population, when we look at the diversity of India, I think we have a lot of challenges in terms of the rural economy. And that's where these kind of roads, these kind of infrastructures will bring that last mile connectivity, which will enable not only the bigger cities, but also the smaller cities to profit from them, and to ensure that we have a seamless connectivity from every district, from every city, from every state to the entire heart of this country. Automotive industry is one of the partners in this growth, and very happy to share that Indian automotive industry right now is the fastest growing automotive industry in the world, even though, as Dhruv mentioned, we have this COVID pandemic which has raged the world, but India is the only country which in the last couple of months has seen huge pent-up demand coming in the automotive industry. In fact, some of the popular models in this country are almost on a waiting period of 8 to 10 months. This shows not only the resilience of the automotive industry, but also the resilience of the people of this country, who have really come out and they have started to experiment and started to live the way the current economic and the pandemic forces them to. I think with these thoughts, I am very confident that we have a stage set for a great future for this country. We have a stage set for a greater mobility and a freedom of expression as far as the citizens of India is concerned. So that's the brief which I wanted to start off with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Puneet. Also, I must thank you for being a participant at this expo and for spreading a very, very important message, which is the message of road safety. I also want to take this moment to thank all the participants for being here, all the panelists for being on the dais, because Shri Kunal Kumar, who's a JS with the Ministry of Urban Affairs, this morning when I was walking him in for the inaugural session, he was mentioning to me that he was a little concerned whether he should be coming for a physical session or whether a virtual session was more appropriate. I'm happy to say that after the session, he said that he's seen the value himself of interacting in a physical setting such as this, because the passion with which people are speaking of the issues that we are discussing here today is only something that you can demonstrate when you're having a conversation face to face. And I think one of the things I must commend the automotive industry for is that over the course of this pandemic, the automotive industry as a whole has been a very good corporate citizen, because the entire industry has come together with leadership from yourselves and from other leaders to find ways in which communities can be supported, PPE kits can be produced in larger numbers, and I think that shows that there's a role for this industry not only in just providing new means of transport, but also in being good corporate citizens and leading to this development of smart cities, which is something that has to filter to all segments of society. It has to be something, a city can only be smart if it caters to all people in the city. So thank you once again. May I request Mr. Venkata Chundru, Director IBI Group, to please say a few words.
Hello, am I audible? Yeah, okay. Firstly, thank you so much for having us on this August forum. One of the primary points that I always have been emphasizing is India and its civilization. Actually, if you see, one of the oldest surviving civilizations is Indian civilization, and one of the reasons why what we say that it is surviving so fast is primarily because of its agility and being able to adapt to the changing situations. And India has shown the way for the world in terms of adopting itself to this, whether it is a internet revolution or whether it could be a digital revolution in payments, what we see in the recent past. I'm just trying to give you the latest examples. We have always shown that adaptability to the environment. Even the COVID is a big example of how we have adapted to the changing situations. So having said that, the mobility for the future cities as actually is driving on 4 pillars. One being connected mobility. Second is a shared mobility. The third, we are talking of a sustainable mobility. And fourth is actually been talked about the electronic mobility. So these are the 4 pillars on which the entire mobility for the future cities is actually going to be focused on. And having said that, it is also important that the technology and its role cannot be undermined in the whole scheme of things, and it is going to play a bigger role in the whole scheme of things, and how to put the entire, all the 4 pillars together and ensure that the system runs efficiently. So in this forum, actually I'm happy that there is representation coming in from all the key stakeholders. One from the policy, second from the automotive industry, the third from the user segment, which is from the Delhi transport, and I will represent the consulting side of the story for today, though our group is actually, our company is involved in both system integration and also in the consulting side of all the smart city and the intelligent transport side. So with us being on board here, I look forward to actually discussing on a couple of those key drivers for the future mobility, and then see if something meaningful that we can take back home and then start working on them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chundru. As you rightly mentioned, it's good to see that we have such a diverse panel, and hopefully we can cover a wide range of topics as a result. May I request Dr. Ravinder Minhas, Deputy Chief General Manager, Delhi Transport Corporation, to share his thoughts, please.
Thank you very much. I'm audible? Thank you. See, in the smart city concept, transportation of people play a vital role. If the public modes of public transports are not available, then it becomes very difficult for a person who is living in the city to move from one place to other. So transportation has a vital role to play in the smart city concept. So, as say DTCs, those who are Delhiites, they must be knowing that we are serving since independence to the public of Delhi. Earlier we used to have yellow and blue color buses. Then we switched over to total fleet to CNG mode, keeping in view the environmental condition of Delhi at that time. We totally converted our fleet from diesel to CNG within a span of 4 years, and with a fleet of 6,000 buses in 2004, we became the largest owner of the CNG fleet of buses in the world. So we are serving eco-friendly buses, and again in 2010 during the this Commonwealth Games, we again switched over our total fleet to low-floor buses, the state-of-the-art low-floor buses, which are you can see green and red buses, cherry color buses plying on the roads of Delhi. Now again we are in the process of procuring 1,000 air-conditioned buses for the convenience of public of Delhi, and 300 electric buses, which will be these AC buses, AC CNG buses will be on road by the by the mid of this year, July, August, and electric buses will be on the road in the beginning of 2022. So basically we have to keep in mind the demand and supply. As on date, in 2010 there was requirement of say 11,000 buses for Delhi, but that has not been coped up. Again, the concept of these private players have come up. The buses plying under DIMS, they are plying on the same routes, and they are giving additional services to us. As on date, there are about 6,000 to 7,000 buses which are serving the Delhiites, but still there is requirement of about total requirement of 16,000 buses in addition to the other modes of public transport. So the demand and supply problem still exists, and I think it will be resolved in the 1 or 2 years, because our procurement services of buses have say tightened up, and regularly we will be procuring the buses, and we are switching over from CNG to now electric buses. Secondly, for the convenience and comfort of public, integration of all public transport is required, which is still lacking. No doubt we have taken certain steps. Our fare structure, is you can, with one card you can travel in metro as well as in all type of buses, either DIMS buses or DTC buses. So this fare integration is there. Now last mile connectivity, for that no one is responsible. DTC says that we are operating standard buses. These are not meant for last mile connectivity. DMRC has brought his own small buses, but that was not successful. So we have to sit together and integrate the services, either small buses, midi buses, standard buses, metro, or other mode of transport. Their integration is a must, so that the public should have hassle-free transportation from starting from his home to reaching his destination. The time required for that should be minimal, which is known as total travel time. That should be minimal. Then there is also need of institutional infrastructure development, which is still lacking. As on date, we don't get drivers to operate the buses. See, this entity is not available anywhere. We are regularly recruiting drivers, but we don't find the drivers of our standard. So institutional infrastructure is needed, which can produce this type of entity, so that there should not be any flaw in the operation of buses, right? So I think this is enough for the beginning. We'll keep on discussing further in the next phase of discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Minhas. As you rightly point out, the integration of all the forms of public transport for the purposes of the citizen is crucial, and it's good to see that these points are being addressed and being looked at. Mr. Sinha, from the point of view of creating policy, one of the discussions that took place in the morning was that even if we look at a smart city, it's very hard to define what is a smart city in the Indian context versus the Western context. So if you look at a Western context, it may not necessarily be applicable to an Indian context, which is very unique to the challenges that we face here in India. So when you're looking at the entire ecosystem, how do you look at it differently for India, and then how do you take policy decisions with that in mind?
You rightly said that there is a significant difference between the definition of, within quotes, smart, between what is thought in the Western world and what is our understanding. But yes, one thing is very obvious, that when we say smart, that means that the element of sustainability is definitely there. That is number one. Number two, we say that expansion, that is one thing which I always emphasize, that it is of a scale that it is able to cater to those for whom it has been constructed. So that expansion is one area. The second could be that it is excellence. So the kind of quality of the materials, maybe construction materials that you are using in the infrastructure development, that itself is of excellence. You go in for a kind of global best benchmarking, trying to find out what is the best in the world, and then you try to bring them to India, customize them, and put them in position in your smart framework. So after expansion, it is that excellence has to be there. In addition to that, the third key factor comes is equity. You cannot be saying that a city is only for, say, upscale residents. It is also for those who are, say, the last end inclusive kind of performing roles. Say laborers are there, delivery boys are there. For them also the city is, that sense of ownership of the city has to come in. What I mean to say is the equity. So with expansion, it has to be excellence, it has to be equity. And the third factor in that smart concept is that of empowering. Everybody must have access to the common infrastructure. That is precisely what we mean by empowering. I can give you one example from railways. Now it is very easy for anywhere in India, even in the remotest of the village, remotest corner of northeast or an island territory, that on a click of a button he is in a position to get his ticket, confirmed ticket. Now similarly, if somebody wants to have an access to, say, an appointment with a particular doctor at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, there is a provision that on a click of the button you can get the appointment confirmed. Now this is what I mean to say empowering. Exactly in a smart concept, all these four factors, excellence, expansion, equity, and empowering, all of the four have to be embedded into it. Then only that smart concept can be taken forward in a more meaningful way. And all policies have to be naturally dovetailed so that all these four concepts can be aligned and taken ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Puneet, if I can pose that same question or the same theme to you, but if I can also look at it from the point of view not only of the future and where we're headed, but also of where we've come from, because today in the Indian market, while Maruti Suzuki has been such a force of nature almost, the only international company and automaker which has been able to challenge that dominance and really make a mark in India has been your company. So one is, what is it that has allowed you to reach that stage? What have you done differently? And for a market like India, what do you need to do differently vis-a-vis the West, for instance, going forward?
Thank you. I think Dhruv, a very, very relevant question, and I think I'll carry on from where Mr. Sinha started, that today when we have to look at the concept of smart city, the aim of an organization or a company or a manufacturer has to be smart itself. So actually speaking, when we looked at Indian vision and we looked at the vision of the government of India, I would like to talk about the 4 key pillars with which our automotive mission is also planned. And that is something which is very much dovetailing with the existing policies of the government. So in short, these 4 pillars are, I would say, they're called the MECA. M, E, C and A. M, as you know, stands for mobility, which is our business, that's our bread and butter. You know, the IC engines, the traditional cars, the traditional two-wheelers, four-wheelers, which for that matter India is the largest producer. That's the first pillar of the smart city concept in terms of providing a end-to-end mobility solution to the customer. The second E stands for what exactly smart means is electrification. So that's the point where which now India is coming into a strong relevance as far as the global market is concerned. And I think as you rightly mentioned out that Hyundai has been the pioneer in this pillar also. We were the first one to launch our first fully electric car, which was the Hyundai Kona way back in the month of July 2019. So, and we have been further progressing towards giving smart electrical solutions to the people of this country. So that's the second pillar which I talked about, the M and E. The third one, C, is connectivity. And connectivity not only in terms of end-to-end connectivity, but connectivity even when you are sitting or driving your car. And that is where we were again the first manufacturer to give India the first connected automotive car, which is the Hyundai Venue, way back in 2019. Now that smart connectivity enables a consumer to gain access to all the work which he is doing in his look at certain locations, whether he wants to send some messages, whether his car has met with a breakdown, everything. He wants to connect with his family friends, he wants to connect with his family members, everything can be done sitting in the car with the click of a button, and that's where our smart connectivity solution called the BlueLink technology was involved. And the fourth one is a very important pillar, which is the A, and A stands for autonomous. That's the area where the world is also going. And I think today we are talking of not only autonomous cars, but we are also talking of autonomous ecosystems. Highways which can charge the car as it is moving, highways which are totally access controlled. I think Mr. Gadkari rightly mentioned out that India is now the fastest collection of toll using the tag system. In fact, the collection has reached almost 100 crores every day. Now this is where the autonomous solutions for the people of this country will be finding places. And Hyundai has been a pioneer in all these 4 pillars. We have been redefining the way people have been using the cars. In fact, now the next mission which we are taking, which rightly mentioned during this year budget, was on the hydrogen. And today we are very honored to say that Hyundai is also foraying very strongly into the hydrogen mission, bringing end-to-end clean energy solutions so that we can truly become a smart country and a smart place to live in. I think these are some of the areas which we have invested our future into, and we are sure that with the support of the government, with the support of all the trade bodies, with the support of the people of this country who have loved Hyundai over the last 25 years, we will be able to create a very unique collaborative solution and a very smart ecosystem going forward, which will be one of the examples not only in India but also across the world. Because one thing good about India is that the adoption rate of the people of this country is very fast. I remember when I was doing my management education, I was in Korea at that point of time, and Korea is supposed to be one of the best connected city in terms of internet consumption. But I found that the usage of e-commerce in Korea is even lower because the people did not have the courage to go online and do transactions. Now when India started doing e-transactions, and in the last couple of years we have seen there is a not only single, double, triple, but exponential jump in terms of the e-commerce transaction. Why? Because rightly mentioned that India is one of the youngest country, our average age is around 28 years, and people are not immersive to transact on the digital platform. So that's the kind of faster adoption which the people of this country are adopting to. And I'm sure as and when the industry is ready with new products, new technologies, new ecosystems, our people will be the fastest to adopt it. And that is where I can say that even the penetration of connected cars in this country is rising on a very, very strong exponential scale. So I think that's where I find that India will be one of the harbingers of the economy. It will be the harbingers of the smart concepts, and it will be one of the model countries to look at in the next decade or so.
Thank you. Mr. Chudru, when you look at India vis-a-vis the West, what are some of the differences that you see, and how do you tailor your own business model to it?
Okay. Primarily, when we actually look at operating business models in this kind of an environment, what is important for us to focus in India, I actually am fully convinced, and then I fully agree with what Mr. Sinha told, that inclusiveness is the most important thing. No business model without inclusivity will be successful in India, especially when we talk about the diversity that we actually have in an Indian environment. It is actually one of the most important criteria and a most as important aspect of a business model that we actually see. I'll just give you a simple example. Like one of the projects that we are actually doing in Bhubaneswar, one of the smart cities, what we realized is having technology is fine. We are actually able to put surveillance cameras, we are actually able to put some smart poles, but what if people are not able to use it? Is every segment of the community is able to use that, right? And how do I actually make every element of the community use that, take the benefit of these kind of solutions? So we are actually designing projects in such a way, not just focusing on technology, but also focusing on creating some sort of a parks or a social or public spaces which are actually more relevant to make the city a child-friendly city, for example, right? Or we are actually trying to make sure that the city is actually taking care of the most illiterate, technologically illiterate element of the community. So the project design has to be in such a way that you are actually able to have different projects and addressing different needs of the community. And your business models have to be focused on those lines, point number one. The second most important element is that you can't have any business model successful in India, especially when we talk about the urban environments or a mobility kind of an environment, where you would want to actually make quick money and then exit from the market, or you can't be a short-term player. You have to always come with being a long-term player, right? So Indian mobility scenario always offers excellent business opportunities, and the business models which are actually focused on long-term play are ones which are actually going to be successful. The third most important thing what I actually see is about the consciousness or an inclination towards having a sustainable or an environmental focus. Like for example, today we are actually talking of electric mobility, right? It definitely is actually towards a business model should always be focusing on creating which is environmental friendly. And whether you actually talk about a shared economy, shared mobility, or a connected mobility, or an electronic mobility, or whatever that we are talking, it should actually focus on the environmental aspect on a long term, right? So these are the three important key differentiators. Of course, the world is today talking of sustainability and focus on environment and all those things, but it does matter a bit more when we actually talk about Indian context. So that's something differentiator what we have actually seen successful business models in India.
Thank you. Dr. Minhas, when it comes to post-COVID scenario, do you feel that there's a change in the mindset when it comes to public transport? Do you see any difference sort of going forward in a post-COVID world where we are all operating in a new normal?
Yes, post-COVID operation of buses or any other mode of public transport, earlier there were restrictions posed on transportation of people by saying that only 1/3 of the bus will be filled, people will sit on the alternate seats. So there was already a problem of demand and supply. It has added to that. Anyhow, on experimental basis, now we are we have been allowed to move the buses or say metro with full capacity. With that, earlier we used to cater about 3.5 million people, now, which has come down after this COVID operations to 6 to 7 lakhs. And now again with the full capacity of operation, we have come up to about 11 to 12 lakhs of people carrying daily. Earlier we used to operate about 7 lakhs of kilometer. The same operation is being done now, but because of restrictions, the earnings have gone down. For sanitization of buses, provision of say masks, or you can say social distancing, the earnings have totally gone down, and there is a say vast difference between the earning per kilometers and cost per kilometers, which is adding further to the losses of the STUs. And for this, as the authorities have taken decision, they have given some concessions to operation of metro either in Delhi or other places. The same concessions can be provided to the bus operators also, either say state bus operators or private bus operators, so that say that the proper operation of buses can be done. As compared to this western operations, I just want to give one example of Singapore. There is a metro station known by the name of Snack Kang. If somebody has gone to Singapore, so there are 3 level of this thing platforms are there. At the top level, there is a light rail moving in a circular way in about 2 kilometer area of that station. It brings the people around the colonies to that station. At the first level, there is a main metro. Anybody coming through LRT, they can board metro and go to any other place of the Singapore. At the ground level, the bus station is there. If somebody wants to use the bus, he can just come 2 steps down and board the bus and go to any place in the Singapore. But here the situation is different. If you get down at ITO, say from metro you get down, and if you want to board a bus, you have to move 1 kilometer by walk to ITO, then you can hire the bus. So these type of problems exist to a great extent with us due to lack of integration. Similarly, if you are coming from South Delhi, you get down at Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg and you want to board the Mudrika service, again you have to walk 1 kilometer to come to Mudrika. So these are the things which needs to be addressed at a very high speed, so that once the person comes out of his home, he should know on mobile. We have many apps, but from mobile he should know that when he comes out of his house, when he will reach his bus station, when he will get the next bus, when he will reach the metro station or for changeovers. So this we call as total travel time. If a person right now is reaching his place in about an hour, making changes, and after say squeezing the total travel time, it should be reduced to at least half an hour, so that no hassle should be there. So we have to reach to that standard, so that people should have say believe that I will, once I come out of my home, I will reach my destination safely, comfortably and economically.
Thank you. If we just look at the EV future for a moment, it's a future that we all accept is coming, but the biggest challenge that seems to stand in the way, I mean, of course there are various challenges in terms of technology, in terms of sourcing of raw materials, etc. But from an immediate standpoint, in terms of adoption, the biggest challenge appears to be that of charging infrastructure. So what is the view that that Niti Aayog's view in terms of how we can accelerate that development of that infrastructure, and whose eventual responsibility is it to develop that infrastructure?
I would put it this way, that there are a lot of stakeholders involved in this setting up of charging infrastructure. You rightly said that it is one of the important part of the ecosystem. So to take that EV adoption to a point of inflection, after which it will roll ahead spontaneously. Now let me say that in EV, in charging infrastructure also, there are two features. One is the standardization part of it, and second is the actually laying down part of it. So of course, let me tell you that we have got at NITI Aayog, we have a national mission on electric mobility and battery storage. I happen to be the mission director also. So in that, charging infrastructure is one of the major thrust areas. And with the help of Bureau of Indian Standards, on one hand we are trying to finalize that what should be the specifications, what should be the standards, what should be the guiding manuals for charging infrastructures and charging points. That is one area in which our engagement is there. And there is a completely dedicated electrotechnical division that is working on it. That is one area. Second is that how to proliferate these charging infrastructure. Now let me tell you, rather than charging stations, now the concept of charging points are coming. So every, say in the residential areas, in your offices, everywhere in the apartments, in the malls, everywhere the charging points can be established. That is one work. The second is that yes, charging infrastructure within the city. Now in Delhi, around 200 plus charging stations are already there, and they are planning for another 400 to 500. The idea of Delhi government is that the entire Delhi should be created into a kind of 3 by 3 kilometer of grid, and in every grid cell there has to be one charging infrastructure. By that I mean that wherever you are, the nearest location will be somewhere close to 3 kilometers. That is precisely in Delhi. But in other states, they are working more vigorously. In fact, that is guided by the state EV policies. And today in the electric vehicle in space, at least 12 states, they have notified their EV policies. 5 are in the process of notifying them. And for many of the smaller states, rather union territories I would say, Daman and Diu, Andamans, Ladakh, Jammu, Kashmir, it is very aspirational because they want that there should be a bigger penetration of electric vehicle, electric mobility in the new vehicle sales. But you rightly said that charging infrastructure is one of the fundamental areas in which NITI Aayog and with the associate line ministries, Ministry of Power, Department of Science and Technology, Bureau of Indian Standards, all of us are working together to ensure that the mobility takeoff is never retarded on grounds of shortage of charging infrastructure facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Puneet, you've got the Kona, which is your EV, very modern, futuristic, good-looking vehicle. What is the feedback that you received to the rollout of a pure EV like that? And what are some of the challenges that people may face in switching over to an electric vehicle?
So, first of all, I like to answer your first question, which you said that how this Kona has done. So, personally, I like to thank on Shri Sinha ji from NITI Aayog and Ministry of Power and also EESL that the recently one tender was floated in this country for the procurement of some smart EVs, and very happy to share that Hyundai was the first company to bag an order of 100 Kona EVs to be supplied across the country. Yes, we have made a small beginning, but I'm sure it's a very powerful beginning because all these Kona EVs will initially be used by all the ministries so that they can set an example and be a game changer model for the people to follow. In terms of Kona, just to share that it gives you a range of around 454 kilometers on a single charge. But you're absolutely right, when it comes to consumers, the challenge of range anxiety for an electric vehicle will always be there. Because you are with your family, you are going out of the station, there could be some challenges in case if you are not able to charge the car, and then how will you come back? So all these questions and all these doubts are there in the minds of the consumers, for which companies like Hyundai have already taken a step ahead, and we are providing not only one but two chargers to the customer, a fast charger and a slow charger. And as various state governments rightly put by Mr. Sinha, that 12 states in this country have already unrolled their EV policy. The 5 states are almost in the process of finalizing that, and once all the states in this country are able to give that kind of fillip, because as I mentioned earlier, it is going to be a collaborative approach. The central government, the state government and the manufacturers, all of them have to come forward so that the adoption of EV can give them that peace of mind, and also the ownership cost should be almost equivalent to that of an IC engine. In fact, in India, Mr. Sinha mentioned the examples of some states. I think this is the right model. We should be looking at setting up some model states in this country. A smaller state like say Goa, which is a highly tourism oriented state. A place like Agra, which again is a very highly tourism oriented state where a lot of dignitaries also come. So if you are able to set up these model cities which are purely on electric model, for example Leh, Jammu and Kashmir, if these areas, these are smaller cities, it is easy to expand the network and infrastructure over there. We are ready to partner with all these state governments. We have already started working in some of these areas. There is a very strong mission by the honorable government to set up a model city in Leh and Ladakh, because it is also a very environmental conscious decision. So we are all working towards that mission, and once these model cities will come into the place, it will set an example for the other states, other cities to follow. And I think with a collaborative approach, we'll all be able to make India a very strong electrified hub as far as the mobility is concerned. Going forward, the cost of electric vehicle itself as of now is a challenge because of various reasons, considering the cost of the battery, because most of the batteries are being imported. But I think that's where Niti Aayog also is playing very important role by setting up a policy for the gigafactories for manufacturing of the electric batteries. Now once those norms and infrastructures are set and we have the battery manufacturing facilities in the country, the cost of the EVs will come down, and as is the plan, EV should be equivalent to the cost of an IC engine. That's the way going forward. And if that happens, I'm sure the adoption of EVs will become so fast, which I already said that India is the fastest adoption of any new technologies. And that will then bring an exponential surge in the spread and ownership of EV cars as far as this country is concerned. We have seen neighboring countries, China as an example, which actually has now already tasted the success of electrification. In fact, they are going for the next level of hydrogen energy, which is again a totally zero emission technology. So once we are able to set up a very strong, robust infrastructure for the usage of electric vehicle, we can then look at other platforms. And I think rightly mentioned, the collaborative approach within various departments, the Ministry of Power, the policy think tanks, Niti Aayog, the BE Bureau of Energy Efficiencies, Department of Science and Technology, and also Ministry of Commerce and Department of Heavy Industries. I think all of this put together, we can create a very, very strong platform for the development and growth of the electrical infrastructure in this country.
And with
Just, sorry, sir, go on, sir.
with the permission of moderator, let me add on to what you're saying, that our understanding is that instead of going in for thin spread of resources, it is better that we create lighthouse cities, cities which can act as a model and which can create that ripple effect which we are desiring, so that the EV, the entire ecosystem is taken forward. And these lighthouse cities have to be one of those 14 cities which are, say, among the top 20 most polluted cities. If we can identify, 14 of them are in India, if we can identify a few of them and create lighthouse effect, that will really bring about the change. And I am sure that all of you know that in the automobile sector, India is one of the world leaders. We are not only a market in two-wheeler, three-wheeler and tractor, we are world's #1 manufacturer. In the buses, we are #2 in the world. In the trucks, heavy trucks, we are #3. In cars, we are #4. So in the automobile sector, India is one of the world leaders, and the latest challenge that all of us we are trying to address is that how precisely to create that space for electric mobility for all the positive spin-offs. Thank you.
Just to add up a point, I would like to really, I myself am an electric car user for last 5 years, and I should say that that mindset of actually using a electric car, that what if the charge goes out, that initially for first few months it was there, but I should tell you, even now I can actually go boldly with even 20% charge. I actually take out my car and then I actually drive out. It's really a biggest convenience that I've actually seen, and one of the no nonsense cars. For last 5 years I've been using this, and I should tell you that this actually has been one of the most easiest driving experiences that I actually had.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Firstly, please allow me to welcome you. Shri Amit Kumar Ghosh is the IAS Joint Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Sir, thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's good to have you here in person. So would you like to start with your keynote address, or do you have a presentation which you would like to make? At your convenience, sir. We are very happy to hear from you. So if you'd like to start, we can take it now.
I have my colleague here. Just connect the.
Okay, so we'll just take one. We'll continue the conversation for a few minutes
Yeah.
until it's ready to go. Dr. Minas, if I could ask you just quickly, because one of the things that is said is that EV adoption in regards to fleets is perhaps easier than a much wider scope when it comes to a general adoption. What is the future for DTC when it comes to EV adoption? And how can you make that a reality in terms of the goals that you have?
We have already started the procurement of e-buses. We have tried these buses long back, 2 to 3 years back. After that, we have floated tenders. One or twice these tenders we have to pre-close. Even I must tell you that BMTC, Bangalore Municipal Transport Corporation, they have to close 7 times their tender because of non-standardization of this thing and the procurement of this type of buses for the first time. Anyhow, now we are on the right way, and we are about to pass an LOI to concerned company for procurement of 300 buses, 300 e-buses, and for that we have demarcated 5 depots for that, 1 in rural and rest in the urban area. So these 5 depots will be developed and the buses which we are bringing for e-buses which we are bringing, they are not, we will be owning those buses. It is on PPP model, and the gross cost contract will be there. The private party will bring their buses, they will be paid on kilometer basis. They will given say certain kilometer of operation per day, the guaranteed kilometer of operation per day, and these 300 buses will be on cross cost contract. And your 5 depots are demarcated, and if there will be 100 buses in a depot, so 50 charging stations will be there, 50 points will be there to charge the buses. So I think those will be sufficient. In addition to the depot, at some terminals also we will put the charging points, so that in case of emergency those charging points can be used. And yes, as you rightly said, that it is easier to cope up with the buses instead of other vehicles, because we have demarcated places where we have to say park these buses, and the points can be provided over there, and very little number of points you need en route, so that in case of emergency the vehicle can be charged and can be brought to the depot, or in case of extreme emergency that can be towed also to the depot for the charging. I know this is our right now first phase proposal. Then 1,000 buses, e-buses are coming with these corporates through DIMTS, and by the next year, and all the buses will be online by 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, I believe your presentation is ready. So would you like to do it from seated, or would you like to be on the dais?
Okay, I am really thankful. First of all, eminent co-panelists and distinguished audience. My name is Amit Ghosh. I am presently working as the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. And the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has two main verticals. One vertical is the highways vertical, which I look after. So I am the highwayman, as you can say. And then the other is the road transport, where they look into Motor Vehicle Act, tolling, and your electric vehicles, etc. I am here to share with you, this is supposed to be my keynote address. I think I am exactly 1 hour behind the scheduled time. I thank all of you for bearing with the delay. I was in a meeting and I have come straight from there. I appreciate the fact that, the industry has come together in such a large number. I would like to congratulate ITPO and Exhibition India. I'm told that they are jointly organizing this event. I welcome you all to this event on behalf of my friend and colleague, Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, who is also the CEO of ITPO. So, Dhruv, if you can put it up, then I'll speak. Yeah, okay. So we are, yes. So, actually, the ministry's business is vast. And I think, based on the flavor I have got while hearing all of you over here, I think I'll have to go very quickly on the highway side. And I would like to make it clear, as I said, I'll be very happy to take your suggestions, note down your suggestions on the mobility as far as road transport side is concerned, and get back to you on that. But very quickly, next please. So, we have a certain structure. Let's go very quickly to the next slide. Road sector, I'll be presenting the perspective of Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and how it is impacting mobility in the years to come. See, already if you look at the road transport sector, it contributes to about 45.71 of the to the GDP as far as all the transport subsectors are concerned. So, next slide please. Now, national highways are always in news, and our projects, the number and the quantum have been increasing. Here is a brief snapshot. This year, I have data till on this slide up to 2018-19, but let me tell you, this year we are trying to hit more than 1,68,000 crores as far as highways side is concerned. So that is, so to say, in a manner of speaking, my remit in this ministry. I will not go into the numbers, but if you look at the other slide, you can see a constant, uptick in the graph. And if you look at the length of construction per day, we were recently in news for two major achievements. One on the iconic and our, very, very flagship kind of project, the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway. We have set up a world record. Anywhere in the world, we have constructed 25 kilometers of 4-lane in one day. And yesterday night, there was a meeting of Honorable Minister with Honorable Minister of Railways, where this achievement was being discussed. So, Abhi, this will come. Other things will be crossing these milestones also, because once you have a milestone, then you say, okay, this is the new normal, let's go beyond. So this year, my figures here have not been updated somehow, but already we have crossed last year's construction achievement, which is 10,237. I am already, we have already achieved 11,000 kilometers. So that is something of which we are very proud, and it's a teamwork, of course, and all the credit goes to NHAI, NHIDCL, and all the state PWDs through which we do our construction. So next slide, please. We can skip this slide. Very quickly, we have evolved our models, and when you talk about models, you know, predominantly, last year we were predominantly in EPC, but this year we have done a lot of work on the HAM model. Again, HAM model is back, so to say, it's trending right now. I'm happy to tell you that I've got 2 bids for BOT toll after a very long time. So BOT projects will also hopefully come back, make a comeback in our country. We are working very hard. We have rewritten the entire contract arrangements for BOT toll also. Next slide, please. So what are our flagship programs? You see, when you are trying to do something as big as trying to transform the way the country travels, a country of the complexity level of India, you have to have not only a highway program, but you have to work with the NIP, the Setu Bharatam program, so that the railway lines, you know, do not hold up our traffic. And then you have the bridge management. We have got hundreds of bridges from British days which need to be replaced very quickly. Then we have, of course, some iconic projects. And yes, very proud to share with you, we have kicked off the first logistics park in public sector from our ministry in the northeast at a place called Jogi Gofa on the Brahmaputra. So next slide, please. Very quickly, Bharatmala, this is my target. My budget is proving to be short, but I think we will be getting extra funds, as you have seen in this budget. So we will be achieving the physical targets with, you know, there will be some more money spent, but that is because on account of land cost. Let's go very quickly. We had got a study done called logistics. Now here I am coming to the subject, you know, what is smart mobility? Smart mobility to me means, you know, if you ask me to quote one parameter, I will quote logistics efficiency. How efficiently am I able to move my freight across the country? And of course, if you ask me from the actual perspective, my would be with intermodality. I mean, from waterways to railways to roads seamlessly, hence the multimodal logistics parks. So we had got a study done, and this is called the logistics efficiency enhancement program study. And this was done before Bharatmala. In fact, Bharatmala came out of it. And we have identified 65,000 kilometers of road for the Bharatmala, of which we have approval for 24,800. Next, please. If you look at the philosophy that this country, and I'll be very happy to, you know, learn from you, are we thinking enough, or do we need some more reference points? First of all, provide alternate routes to diversify traffic. If you have to go to Bombay, you don't have to go via Udaipur and, you know, Jaipur-Udaipur highway. We are doing a new highway. You have to go from Amritsar to Gujarat. We are doing, as the crow flies, a new highway. It will be, today morning only we approved one package of 1,000+ crores. And in 3 years, from Amritsar, without coming to Delhi, you will be reaching up to Jamnagar port. So when you are doing these, new possibilities open up. We'll talk about that. So the next is improve the alignment. There is no need to visit every station or every city en route. Give them spurs. Mitigate issues of land acquisition, utility shifting, other clearances for existing roads when you are trying to upgrade them. And provide thrust to the economy of backward regions. And I think that this discussion should focus on the backward regions of the country also, because you see, the basic theme of our discussion here today centers around mobility and smart cities. Smart cities are not only the city of Delhi or Mumbai, you know, they have to be built across the country, and in some cases de novo we have to build. So when you are having new, look at the Chinese, what they have done, one belt, one road. Once they have done that, they have envisaged mega cities over the coming years across different parts of the world. So we have to think like that. Next, please. Now, I was talking about the expressways. Our country is now focusing on getting to the point of destination in a faster manner for the freight as well as passenger traffic. This 26 January 2023, we will open the Delhi-Vadodara-Mumbai Expressway. We are doing about, if you look at the old programs of National Highway Development called the NHDP, National Highway Development Program, we have included that all in our new development, and now there is one program for mega development called Bharatmala. What we are trying to do, I think I'll skip this next slide and I'll just show you something. How quickly we are working. This year, till now, we have approved 97 projects under hybrid annuity mode. So if you take 360 days, I'm practically every fourth day I'm approving one project, Sundays, Saturdays included. So this is the speed at which now the system is working, and hence you are getting more kilometerage per day. So go to the next. We have awarded about 13,521. But nothing is possible if we do not collaborate with our state governments. So some state governments have come forward to share part of the land cost. Many state governments have given us a lot of facilities in terms of reduction of the cost when we shift their utilities out of our national highway ROW. So if you look at the government of Kerala, because Kerala, we have the NH66, and this is one from Mumbai to Thiruvananthapuram. And this road is the only road there which, carries so much of traffic, and the traffic speed doesn't cross 30, 35 if you have traveled on that road in Kerala. So we are doing a 6-laning of the road. You can imagine 4-laning, 6-laning in sections. It's a huge task, and Kerala government has come forward to share cost of land with us. So we are trying to work with them. But let me just show you one slide. Go to the next slide, please. This is the share of roads in the national infrastructure pipeline. And if you look at, roads will be 19.64 in the infrastructure to be developed, 19.64 lakh crores in the infrastructure to be developed, part of the national infrastructure pipeline in the next 5 years. So, big push to infrastructure, all in various sectors, and in roads in particular. So, road sector, what we are trying is to go to the next slide. Yeah, please, thank you so much. We are trying to boost private sector participation. We are trying to change the profile of asset ownership. I'll be talking about that in just a short while. So if you look at here, all the players who are here on the transport side, you can see that you will have more and more road assets to buy, to sell, to monetize, and to operate upon. Next, please. We can skip this, but I just want to say that NIP focuses also on urban mobility and the MRTS and bus connectivity within 800 meters of homes in more than 50 cities. This is the vision under NIP. Now, we have taken a number of steps to make sure, we had projects running into thousands of crores which were languishing. I'm happy to tell you that I do not have even 5 projects now which are in the category of languishing in the country, across the country. Everything is on the go, except those which have been referred to NCLT by the companies themselves. ILFS, of course. So now if we, what we have done, we can go very quickly. These are the major challenges that we are facing: land acquisition, project financing, environment clearances, cost escalations. We are trying to solve all these problems. I do not plan to go deep into this, but I'll be happy to answer any email on these. And let's go to the next slide. We have many mechanisms to solve all these problems. In fact, I invite you to go to this website, pragati.nic.in. Each meeting chaired by Honorable Prime Minister, you can read the minutes. This is the kind of transparency and consistency in maintaining the records of the problems, the way we are trying to solve them. Next. So these are the challenges ahead. Let's go to the next slide. I feel that, you know, COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our GDP, so we need to work harder and give it a bigger push. And you have seen that our ministry has received the largest increase in outlay in any infrastructure ministry in the budget, which will go online from 1st of April. Next, please. So, during the time that I have been here in this ministry, we have done some iconic projects, and this new Brahmaputra bridge is something which we are kicking off now. This will take 7 years to complete. I mean, I'm just trying to tell you that we live in Delhi, we don't realize that there are still, you know, manzile aur bhi hain hasil karne ke liye. To build one bridge, this country will take 7 years, but it will be the longest bridge on Brahmaputra in the country, and it will cost 7,000 crores. But I'm happy to tell you that we have gone beyond that, and now we are thinking, we are at the point of, you know, conceptualizing a tunnel below Brahmaputra from one bank to the other. Not going for bridge. We are going for a tunnel below the river. So these are the kind of solutions that we are thinking. Let me tell you, I have been to the Chanani Nashri tunnel in Jammu Kashmir, just short of Ramban. I was so proud. And I invite all of you to visit these areas and see the kind of engineering marvels that we are building. So let me go to the next slide. Next, please. These are our, okay, so the subject that was under discussion, electric mobility. I have discussed with my colleague, the Joint Secretary Transport, who's looking after this, and I have got some information to share with you on his behalf. Next, please. So we feel that the driving forces for electric mobility, of course, the climate change agreement has kicked it off. You know, we have now the National Air Quality Control Program. And it started with Delhi and all this parali birding. But now we have in this country got a program. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is leading that, to look at the air quality of the major cities in the country, 100 of them. So we have these quality concerns about ambient air. Our energy security is a very big issue, and that is, of course, behind our, you know, the EV thrust and the thrust on solar power. We are the thought leaders today, with our Prime Minister leading the discussion on global platform on solar energy. Next, please. So we have done some changes in our rules, which my colleague felt that I should reiterate from this platform. No permits are required for 3W vehicles electric. Driving license will be given to 16-year-old young people should feel happy to drive electric two-wheelers. Green number plates for electric vehicles. Now you can see a number of them. The ministry has, our ministry, many vehicles have already converted to these number plates. There is an exemption given in odd and even scheme in Delhi that we have done. And then registration details are now the motor number in place of the engine number. And next, please. we uh, we have done a lot of homologation in the sense that, if you look at all these regulations, they have been brought together so that proper shift takes place. So the industry experts who are sitting here, they are aware, e-rickshaw, battery safety, then the All India standards for the industry for electric vehicles. So all these we have done. The subject of charging stations was being discussed. Here I want to tell you that we are thinking about 450 wayside amenities along our national highways to be developed in a concentrated manner, in a focused manner in the next 3 years. With so many roads coming up and so much of traffic having grown over the last 10 odd years, so people need these wayside amenities, and there are examples on the Yamuna Expressway and other places when you visit. So now we have made these, the development of these amenities an integral part of highways development, and providing points for EV charging will be, is part of our policy. Next. So these are the standards which have been notified by the ministry for requirement of construction and functional safety, measurement of electrical energy consumption, method of measuring the range, measurement of net power, maximum 30-minute power, CMVR type, approval for EV, and safety requirements for traction batteries. The ministry has already notified these standards. So I think, the issue, yesterday we were talking about the standards that inform the rail sector in the meeting, and the chairman railway board, the CRB, was mentioning that our standards are for the railway side, I'm talking, as good as any global standard. So what we are trying to do is to prepare India for, make it future ready for smart electrical vehicle use, and these are the, there are some other notifications. Next please. There are some retrofitment. This is going to be very important for many vehicles and many players in the sector. So retrofitment regulations have also come. Next please. Alternate fuels is something that our ministry is driving, and you are aware of, the Honorable Minister is very, very keen on ethanol. And these are some of the blends which have been notified, their standards, emission standards, etc. And the idea is to open up the market and also provide, in terms of, private sector participation, opportunities to private players, and also reduce dependence on the fuel imported from other countries. Next please. Now we have done some work very, very recently. So if you look at the 25th September 2020, so addition of hydrogen to CNG has also been allowed. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Now I think the industry should educate us on what we can have a discussion on this slide in particular. I thought you can tell us about how you see the use of these alternate fuels impacting the growth of transportation in the country. Next please. So what we are doing is we are requesting all ministries to encourage pollution-free alternate fuels and use and have measures to increase fuel efficiency. We are already asking them to move from diesel and petrol vehicles to electric vehicles and alternate fuel vehicles, etc. Next please. So here I want to now really want to talk to you about how the landscape of transportation from the asset ownership point of view is going to look in the next, I think, 10 years. We are moving very fast. So one I have already mentioned, which is the public-private partnership, the HAM models and the BOT toll, etc. What we are trying to do also is to completed road assets can be monetized. So if you look at, we have already raised about 16,860 crores by monetizing our assets. Happy to tell you that our target was 10,000 crore. With this month, it has been revised upward to 30,000 crore for the coming financial year. We have to raise 30,000 crore from monetization of our assets. So the last one I want to say, I am the director of the SPV, which is raising funds for Delhi-Mumbai Expressway. So what we are trying to do is not only rely on budgetary allocations and toll funds, etc., but off the balance book, but through SPVs, we are, in fact, yesterday we have raised about 37,000 crores from various banks for this SPV for Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, which is going to cost us 1 lakh crore or so. Next, please. We have a long-term plan for monetization of highways. We have identified 7,000 kilometers. But this is not going to be enough. I think that we'll have to finally identify about 30-40,000 kilometers of highways, because some bundles and some assets people will not take, and there'll be some issues somewhere. So we have to improve. So if we look at the 5-year plan that we have, we feel that projects with capex of about 6,82,000 should get us, potentially 85,000 crores very quickly, and then the party is free to toll it. So with this, I think that, if I look at what mobility is going to be in this country, I think we are now irreversibly on the path to on more environment friendly use of fuels, alternate fuels, electric vehicles, and I'll be very interested to hear from you and learn from you as to what you are thinking, and where exactly, if you think a micro push is required or something is pending somewhere, we can drive it for you, and I'll be very happy to hear from my eminent co-panelists on these issues and also the issues which they have raised earlier. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Yours is a very dynamic ministry. Not only are you building roads and tunnels and bridges, but you're building bridges between people. And we started off this session saying that what does it mean to be smart? The first step to that is connectivity. And I think that that's what your ministry and what you bring to the table. This is a discussion that we could have for another hour and a half. Unfortunately, we've already overextended our time, and there's another session starting on water security. Actually, we've just eaten into a few minutes of the next session's time, so we'll have to take Q&A and other discussions between the panelists offline. But I'd like to thank all of you for being present this afternoon. I'd like to thank all my eminent panelists, and I'd like to present a vote of thanks, please, to all the panelists.
Dhruv, just if I can take 1 minute. In fact, it will be our honor to, thank Mr. Ghosh. As I had, early mentioned during the beginning of my address, that yesterday the Honorable Minister of Road Transport and Highway, Shri Gadkari ji, was amongst us on one of the award functions, where he had overlaid the great, achievements which MORT, especially the highways, has done. And in fact, same thing was also presented by Shri Ghosh ji. I think this is where the India is going to become a very, very strong power in the world, with 35 to 40 kilometers of road laying every day, which Mr. Gadkari had announced yesterday, and already we saw in the presentation how it has gone from 11 kilometers to 35 kilometers in the last couple of years. It shows the resilience and the power of our government, and also shows the intent with which we are working together. India was also one of the first countries in terms of environmental norms to jump directly from BS4 to BS6. That was in the year 2020, April, when we moved to the new era, and that's where the pollution and the challenges of unclean economy also will be taken care of. And now we are also in touch with the Ministry of Road Transport for the next phase of BS6, which is the CAFE 2 and the RDE2 norms to be finalized. So I think that is where we feel that India becoming largely a country which is not only fastly becoming a very strong economy, but also in terms of motorization, we are also taking leaps and bounds success in terms of adopting whatever has been done in the Western culture, but also going beyond the kind of adoption which has happened over there. And I think that's where the collaboration, the stakeholders, MORTH and all the departments will be working. So I think from everybody over here, I'd like to personally thank the Honorable Minister and also his strong team for bringing and laying a very strong foundation of a resilient India. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before shall I start the mementos? Before we end the session, I would request our moderator to please present mementos to esteemed guests. Mr. Amit Kumar Ghosh, who is a Joint Secretary, Ministry of Road and Transport and Highways. Mr. Puneet Anand, who is AVP, Corporate Affairs Unit, Hyundai Motors India. Shri Sudhendu J. Sinha, Transport and Electric Mobility, Niti Yog. Mr. Minas, a memento for you, sir. And last but not the least, sir, Mr. Chundru. Thank you. The moderator can wind up. Is it a break now? So you can...
Thank you very much once again to all our panelists. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very dynamic space that we've discussed, and it's something that makes all of us as Indians very proud. The steps that we're taking and the development that's being made in this sphere. As all of you also touched upon, there's a great amount of integration that's required between different departments and different stakeholders for us to take that next big step and leap forward. I thank you all once again for being present this afternoon, and I urge you to stay on for the next session on water security, which should be starting immediately. Thank you.